All right, welcome back to another edition of PA High School Football Report, 34 Waggle edition. We have made it to October, brother.
Oh, yeah. The ghosts are starting to come out, starting to get the jack-o'-lanterns and everything.
Way too early decorations. They're already up.
Are you a candy corn guy?
No. No.
I'm the only person in the world that's a candy corn guy.
No, I don't candy corn. No. Isn't that is Halloween?
That's Halloween.
Is it?
Come
All
on.
right. I don't know. That's terrible.
Yeah.
All right, he's Dan Sostek. I'm Eric Epler. We are both powered by PennLive and the Patriot News. I always like to check with my colleague first and foremost about his weekend. He's young, so he goes out on the town, he parties. So, I'm an old guy. I don't do that anymore, so I like to see how your weekend go. But I will say this, for being a Pitt grad, it's been a really tough football season for you. Not only Pitt, but, Belichick's now letting you down.
Yeah, I mean, it's back-to-back watching Phil Jurkovec and Mac Jones back-to-back.
Icy.
It feels like I had 20 years of Tom Brady, so I feel like now it's kind of the football gods kind of reminding you that this is how the sport works for 99% of everyone. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so Dan, what we're going to do today, obviously, once we crest over the midpoint season, we handed out a bunch of awards last week. We call this the stretch run now, the last 4 weeks now of the regular season. People start to eyeball now the District 3 power ratings and how teams are sort of shaping up and lining up for those, valuable postseason spots. You can find the latest set on PennLive. It's up there right now. So the shuffling for those spots really, really begins and starts to heat up. The exception, of course, is Class 1A, where Steel High would just give them the crown now and move them on into the state playoffs.
Exactly.
Because it's just 3 teams in 1A for District 3. So our focus here over the next 30 minutes or so is going to be to identify – what we're going to do is we're going to identify a handful of guys who we believe are really key assets in that stretch run for those teams. And they're going to be just invaluable weapons and tools to kind of get their teams to that point where they could possibly be in a position to make the postseason. So most of the names you're going to probably know. There's going to be some names in there that are not household names. We sort of dug a little deeper into key figures, and not just offensive guys, but some guys on both sides of the football that are doing really good things, have done really good things, but their team's going to lead a lot more of that, over the last 4 weeks to kind of, bounce into the postseason. So we'll start with you. You give us a guy, and we'll chat about him, and we got 5 guys each.
All right, I'm going with the big dogs first, starting with the team I covered this past weekend, Harrisburg. Mm-hmm. They've recovered really nicely from one of their biggest losses probably in recent memory, the 38-6 loss to Manheim Township on that weird Saturday game that was, delayed, and they went to and from Lancaster twice. They're now 5-1, number 2 in 6A, but their schedule the last 4 weeks is not exactly a cakewalk. They've got CD East, who, I would favor them pretty heavily, but it's still a team with a lot of D1 talent on that roster. Then you have State College on the road, never an easy place to play. Then Central Dauphin on the road, along with the Chambersburg game that, Chambersburg has been a little feistier this year than years past. They're going to need, I think especially for those State College and Central Dauphin games, they're not going to be able to just, utilize their typical, ball control, run down their throats. They're going to need to get Elias Koch involved. He had 3 catches for 96 yards this last week, kind of because they didn't really need to because they were just running all over Altoona after they figured everything out. But in some of these games, I think they're going to have to find ways to get Elias Koch the ball 6-7 times a game at least. Maybe find more creative ways to even, get him the ball in the short field, because he's not just a big receiver that can, go up and get the ball. He can make guys miss. He's faster than a lot of these guys too. I think they're going to definitely need him in the playoffs if they want to make a playoff run. But I think they're going to need him to beat State College and Central Dauphin, who are 2 high-flying offenses in their own right. And I think he's going to be really important to the team, because it feels like when Harrisburg has won their games, they haven't really needed to use him too much. He had some big games against Cumberland Valley, Carlisle, but I think that he's going to be the difference in a lot of these games if they're able to pull him out.
Yeah, I think the difference, too, with the games that I saw Harrisburg so far, and why Elias Koch's numbers aren't ginormous, haven't really been, magnanimous yet, is the fact that Sean Lee's running ability.
Yeah.
A lot of times when plays break down or their design runs for Lee, he's so capable to move the chains with his legs that it takes away a little bit some of the passing yards. And, of course, teams are trying to rev up on Coke too because they know how dangerous he is.
Yeah.
My first guy is Drew Brandstetter. This obviously he's a household name coming in. He had a great season last year. Only a junior. First couple of weeks looked like gangbusters, and obviously he got injured there in week 3. And we heard all kind of things about Brandstetter, about how he'll be back in 2 weeks, then he'll be lost for the season. We didn't know how severe this injury was. The good news is he came back last week or over the weekend, and Campo came up with a 22-3 victory over Susquehanna to kind of get sort of back on track. The Lions aren't in immediate danger of missing the playoffs in D3 2A. It's likely they're going to have to make an upset over one of these capital heavyweights to kind of get into that 2 spot. And that's where you want to do. Right now they're 3. They want to get in that 2 spot. They've got Steel High Trinity and West Perry yet. That in succession. That's a gauntlet.
Yeah.
So, but I think to kind of get into that 2 spot, I think they're going to have to be a 6-4 program, and they're going to have to get one of those under their belt. Which one? I don't know. They're not going to be favored in any of those 3 games. So, in order to get inside Anvil Cleone, I think they need to get one of those. And I think Branster's the guy. Obviously, that offense is. No offense to Kobe Moore, we love watching him run the football and run the Wildcat and play quarterback, but this is a much different offense when Drew Brandstetter is the pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's been one of the better stories in the last couple of years just because, 2 years ago that Camp Hill program looked pretty, I don't want to say lifeless, but it really couldn't get the ball moving at all. It's just it's a numbers game a lot of the times with them, right? Because their offensive line, it's going to be what it's going to be. But Brandsetter's really figured out a way to, push the ball downfield with his really good weapons he has too.
Yep.
But they need him. If they're going to beat any of those teams, they're going to need to get 250, 300 yards passing from him, and probably needs to average that for the rest of the game.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, that's a good pick. I'm staying with that position, and I'm going with a team that's fighting for its playoff life that, I'd frankly say, I'm sure they'd probably agree with too, has been kind of a pretty disappointing season start the year. And I'm going with Brady Heiser at Gettysburg. Mm-hmm. It's not disappointing on his end. He's had a really good year, really mobile quarterback. I think he's really talented. He has a lot of Ivy League interest.
Yep.
But they're 3-3 right now. They are sitting right now 14th in 5A. But there's a lot of wiggle room in there to get up there, and they have 4 winnable games on their schedule. They have Waynesboro, Greencastle, Antrim, Northern York, Susquehanna Township. Those Greencastle and Susquehanna Township games are going to be tough, but
yep.
I think Heiser's a type of kid that he feels like someone that will be able to rise to the moment. He's like I said, he's really mobile. Had a couple 100-yard rushing games. You're really gonna need that against these, especially in that season finale against Susquehanna Township, because we know despite kind of the unevenness of that Susquehanna Township season, they're a team that can put points on the board in a hurry, and you're gonna need to be able to put it on. I would expect them to be favored against Waynesboro, Northern York, maybe even Greencastle. That'll be an interesting line. That might be a pick'em.
Yep.
But if they go 4-0, all of a sudden they're back in the playoff mix, and and that defense is really slowly but surely coming along, because that was definitely the Achilles heel early on in the season. And if Brady Heiser can kind of get the offense rolling, I think that they might be able to sneak in the playoffs. And who knows at that point, because they have a big roster, a big line, guys like Jacob Dickerson on there. They might be able to make some noise there, but they have to get in and dance first.
Yeah, I agree. I got to see Gettysburg in person against Mechanicsburg, and I watched a little bit of film on them before that, the couple weeks before that, and it almost seemed like it. And you mentioned Dickerson and that line, basically, that's a good offensive line, but it almost seemed like it took them a while to kind of get into the groove of the season, and everything became rushed. Everything that Heiser had to run became rushed, and it didn't really. It set the timing off for Preston Burnett in the run game. It set the timing off for Brady Heiser, who's very capable of tucking it and running. Yeah. So he seemed to have to do that earlier than expected. When you play quarterback in a pass game, it's all about timing.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like the routes were shortened because of the fact that it took the line a little time. But now Brady Heiser seems very comfortable. He looked very comfortable and sort of commanding against Mechanicsburg, and he's been that way for the last couple of weeks too. So I agree with you completely. It's a good pick. All right, I'm going to switch over. I'm going to dip down into the Liberty division, and I'm going to say Tyler Early from Upper Dauphin, a junior running back, slot guy. He doesn't lead the Trojans in rushing. That belongs to Caleb Snyder. But at 8.4 yards a carry, that's a great second and third option for Coach Smeltz. He does lead him in receiving, 24 yards a catch for this guy. And he's posted 6 touchdowns already, and he provides the kind of versatility. Every playoff team has one or two of these guys where you could basically line him up in 4 or 5 different spots, and he's going to get yards for you. He's going to be successful for you. Early's been a great compliment to QB Aiden Bingaman, Snyder, and these guys, and even sophomore Carter Drybelbis, who's been really, really good for them. They need more of this guy down the line because their strength of schedule right now is not the best. When it comes to the playoffs, it's going to get a little boost because they still have Juniata, they still have Line Mountain to play. So they're going to get a little boost here in the strength of schedule down the stretch. But when you're only taking 6 teams in 3A, UD's probably at best going to be in that 5 or 6. So they're going to be away. B, they got to sneak in. Right now, they're right on the cut line at number 6 in 3A. So they got to handle their business and probably get 3 out of the last 4 to guarantee themselves a spot.
But this is why you never sleep on a program like Upper Dauphin, right? Because they always find guys like this to kind of replace what they lost a year ago. Because we were really concerned about, will they find a guy to replace Brady Morgan? And Eardley's done a really good job of that because that's the type of stuff Morgan did, right? He wasn't just the right. He was also dangerous out of the backfield as well. So I think that's a good pick. I'm sticking in the Commonwealth Division. I'm going with another team sort of fighting for its playoff life. And I'm going with CD East, but I'm not going to go with, one of their superstar, top recruit guys. Like you could easily go Jared Porter, but I think we know what Jared Porter is going to give you. I think we know what Zach Brown's going to give you. I'm going with Xavier Armstrong, kind of diminutive senior wide receiver for CD East. I've been really impressed with him when I've watched him play this year. He's a really kind of shifty, quick wide receiver that they find creative ways to get the ball. And it's, again, when you're in a division like the Commonwealth, you're going to need to find ways to score points. You're going to need to find ways to get the ball to your athlete, especially when you have Harrisburg and Central Dauphin on your schedule. I'd say I'm not good at this, power ranking math stuff. I think they're probably going to need, I don't know if 5-5 gets you into the playoffs there at 6A. It might. It's going to be pretty tough because they have Carlisle and Chambersburg, which I imagine will be favored in both those games, and Harrisburg and Central Dauphin, which they'll be the underdogs in. Mm-hmm. But they're going to need to find ways to do more than just get Jared Porter the ball because those Harrisburg and Central Dauphin defenses will load up and make you do something else. And I think that if they have to do something else, I think Xavier Armstrong's been a guy that's proven the ability to kind of make those big plays when needed. He was their only real source of offense in their loss to Cedar Crest. I know you've seen CDs a couple times. I think you've been impressed with Armstrong as well.
I have been.
And I think he's a guy that if they want to be in that 6A bracket, he's going to have a big final 4 weeks. Yeah,
I totally agree with that one. Absolutely. He's been good on defense too. Yeah. All right, my next guy is Jason Burney, the quarterback from Milton Hershey. And let me preface this by saying, I think Burney's done a really good job at providing basically, and not just numbers-wise, but providing a consistency at a position where there really hasn't been that consistently, attacking quarterback who you trust with every play in the playbook over the last couple of years at Milton Hershey. There are reasons for that, but just Burney kind of stepped in last year, had a little bit of success, and I think he's done really, really well. But I do still think that offense needs to be more consistent. Yeah. And when I say that, I say against even or superior opponents. Mm-hmm. It seems like it falters when your line is pressed, when when the athletes are of the same size, same strength, same sort of ability. I just think Milton Hershey sort of plays a little below their capabilities in that situation. I don't know. I don't think there's one thing they could do differently that would, wipe that out. I think it's just collectively it's as a team, and obviously as a team, your pilot and the guy who steers you is your quarterback. And Burney's the kind of guy who's very capable of doing that. But you've got Lower Dolphin, Cedar Cliff still on schedule. and you've got 2 other games where you're probably going to be the favorite. Yeah. So to me, it almost seems like Milton Hershey, which is sort of right now they're 8, I believe. Mm-hmm. If I'm not, I think they're 8, and I think obviously in 4A you take 10. Yeah. So you're probably going to need 3 of those 4. Yeah. To guarantee yourself a spot. It gets real. The formula gets real weird in that 8 to 12 for 4A. Yeah. Most particularly. 5A is very similar when you're talking about taking the top 12. So anyway, I think Bernie's the kind of guy that could kind of steady the ship and maybe elevate this football team, this offense, a little bit more than what we've seen.
Yeah, because I think I've seen the Milton Hershey a couple times this year, and my general sort of read on them is that when their line is kind of not overtasked, Jason Burney really is good at picking his targets, finding them in stride, getting Mo Karoma, one of the fastest guys in the conference, the ball, getting Angel Roberts, one of the best contested catch guys, the ball, and using that run game with Elijah Johnson. But when kind of things get a little dicier, it's been up and down. He still is a big play threat. They still they're a team that you probably don't want to feel too comfortable about if you're ahead early. And
right.
Frankly, their showing against McDevitt wasn't that discouraging because you kind of have to look at those through the separate
you're
lenses.
Right.
But the Hershey game was a tough one. Hershey might just be a really good team though. But you're right. I think that even in those 2 games, they're underdogs. They're live underdogs, but it's getting to the crunch time where they're going to have to prove it. So
yeah, I agree. Yep.
All right, I'm going to an interior lineman.
Nice.
Let's go big guy. And this team is not in too much danger of missing the playoffs at this point. It's kind of the thing we've been talking about for a while, which is it's East Pennsboro of all teams going to go 10-0. Firstly, I got to give a shout out to Bill Purnell. Their top
fabulous.
Their top tier stat man. He was ribbing me for not giving them credit last week for best press box. I told him it's because I hadn't been to a game.
That's right. It was just games we had been, places we had been.
Yeah,
right.
And I went to Enola this week. It was fabulous. Really great environment there. I think that community's really getting behind the Panthers. And let me tell you, I think that the reason that if this team goes 10-0, the reason it goes 10-0 is for as good as Keith Otis, not Oates, Otis, has been, I think the reason they have a chance to go undefeated is because that defense just comes up with big play after big play time and time again. And I think in the middle of it is creating that pressure from the interior, and I think Josh Angelo has done a really great job on both ends for them. I think if he stays that disruptive force, pretty manageable schedule: Northern, Shippensburg, Susquehanna Township, Waynesboro. I can't imagine this team wins fewer than 9 games.
Right.
And I really think that the versatile defense they have, led by Angelo, could get them to 10 wins.
Yeah, and if any community sort of deserves a year like it's developing there, it's East Pennsboro. If you know why, you know why. Yeah. It's just been a rough, last couple of years. Lots of things happening there, and John Dennison has really just put his stamp on this program. Yeah. Really, he's a tremendous coach, tremendous motivator, and you could tell just by watching everybody they play for this guy. Yeah. They play for this guy. So congrats on the great start.
They have a chip on their shoulder. I think it's the best start since 2014, and before that, 1960-something, according to, again, Bill Purnell, who gives us the best stats.
Well, we've seen teams have, surprisingly great starts and things like that, and they walk around a little differently. Mm-hmm. That's not East Penn. No. They're just putting it on the line, putting it on the field, and congrats to them for being 6-0. All right, since you went lineman, I'm going to go to my number 5 guy. And I'm going to say Tyler Merrill, the offensive tackle of Cumberland Valley. And, all right, maybe I'm putting a little bit more pressure on a sophomore, but he's not a rookie anymore. Yeah. Okay? And I say this not to suggest he hasn't been playing great. He hasn't. Cumberland Valley obviously has had some success. They're hoping to make it back, but I think that's been the difference. I would like to see one guy up front, sort of take the lead, be a little bit more vocal with these guys, and get a lot more consistent offensively. They had a good showing against CD East. Bryce Sterritz had 255 yards rushing.
Chambersburg.
So that tells you your offensive line was handling their business. So maybe maybe there's more than one guy now, or that it's just have these guys gelling. But right now, CV's strength of schedule is number 1 across the board in 6A for District 3. That's probably not going to change. They may go to number 2, but they have to find a way to get to 5-5. You're 2-4 right now. You have to get to 5-5, and 5-5 with that schedule gets you into the postseason. So that's right now what they're doing. You're going to be favored against Carlisle and Altoona. You're not going to be favored against Central Dauphin and State College. Yeah. So you're going to have to somehow rip one of those Band-Aids off against the Little Lions or the Rams to get in there. And that only happens if that offensive line continues to work like they did against East.
Yeah, because we thought that offensive line was going to be the reason if they were going to be an elite team.
Yes.
It's going to be because that was going to be one of the top units.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get there. And, again, like you said, maybe we did put a little too much on, Tyler Merrill being a sophomore.
Right,
and because he has the recruiting profile.
And that's why. That's why. And he's a good player. I mean, he's been good.
And also one line. It's a unit thing. It's like you can have one great offensive lineman and still have a bad line. It's all about working. As one unit, especially the way they run that offense and running with Bryce Starrett. That's pretty much. We all know that's how they want to run that offense. But Josh Oswald, I think, is pleased with the progress. I think the more you talk to him, the more you kind of figured. It kind of sounds like he thought this was going to be kind of a grind of a season.
Yes.
And that they were hoping to come out at the end better than they were when they started. And they're on the right track now with a couple big wins. So we'll see.
All right, your last guy, Dan.
I kind of waffled on a bunch of guys, and then I realized this is the obvious pick. I'm going Lex Cyrus, wide receiver from Susquehanna Township. And it's just a matter of fact of just get him the ball. Just get him the ball.
Get him the damn ball.
Get him the ball. He is the fastest high school student in the state of Pennsylvania. You can argue. Yeah, I mean, according to track and field.
According to track and field,
he's the fastest 100-meter dash runner.
Yep.
And they said it's different on a football field, but I mean, you don't have a Texas A&M offer if that speed doesn't translate to the football field. They've got to figure out ways to get him the ball. They did a good job last week against Waynesboro. They're at 4-2 right now, and I believe they are in the playoff picture right now in 4A, number 7. But they have a tough schedule. Last 4 games, Greencastle's no rollover. They should be able to beat a Northern team that's been pretty down this year. But then home against East Spencer, that's going to be a really fun game.
Yep.
And then away at Gettysburg, kind of feels like a Gettysburg team that you kind of wanted to get earlier in the year as opposed to later. I wouldn't want to see Gettysburg week 10 because that's kind of when they might figure stuff out.
Right.
Just get this. It doesn't matter if it's a reverse. It doesn't matter if it's a screen pass. It doesn't matter if it's him taking wildcat snaps. They have a really good running back in Dorian Smith. They have a mobile quarterback in T.D. Evans. But man, just get Lex Cyrus the ball. Let him lead that offense.
Yep.
Find ways to let him lead. And it's easier said than done. I get that. But when you have a weapon like that, you've got to. There shouldn't be a game where he touches the ball 4 times.
Right.
He should be touching the ball 10 times a game.
Right, exactly. All right, quickly, Dan, my last guy is Chase Fry, the quarterback at Big Spring. I got a chance to see Big Spring against Trinity. Heck of a comeback. It fell short, 28-22. But it was something interesting. Grant Hall, the running back, said to me after the game. He said, we established a passing game today. And I didn't think much of it because Chase was 5 for 11 in the game for 87 yards. And I'm thinking, wow, that doesn't really dazzle me. But I thought, I dug deeper. I thought more about it. And I'm like, you know what? He was talking about the stretch run. He was talking about the threat and the confidence in Chase Fry to run the offense, not only get the ball just to Connor Green and Grant Hall, which they love to do, and obviously the chains move when those guys get the ball, but to have that threat and have the confidence in Chase Fry to throw to not only give the threat of the pass, but obviously to consistently make those kind of plays and get the passing game in gear a little bit. Really keeps defenses honest. 3-3 right now for Big Spring. They're going to need to have a heck of a stretch run. Fry's going to be an important figure for them, no doubt, down the stretch. Which has basically, you still have Trinity, you still have West Perry, you still have Steel High
Yeah.
left in the schedule. So you've got some barn burners to come up with, and so you need a complete offense. Fry's a guy that can give Big Spring just that.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing. We've seen them hang in these games against top opponents.
Yeah,
they have played Steel High, and it was
Yes, I'm sorry. That's right. Yeah.
But they were in that game for a while. It just got to the point where they couldn't move the ball downfield because Steel High started loading the box and kind of daring Big Spring to beat them with the passing game. And they found some creative ways to do it, but if they can just get that passing game going a little bit more, it's going to open up Grant Hollow. I think is one of the more dangerous running backs in the conference. And then you get into the playoffs with that team, and who knows? They've got a lot of weapons, and that defense is really good.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, fellas. There's 10 invaluable assets down the stretch run. I hope you enjoyed it. We want to welcome in our newest colleague, Evan Wheaton, who's over here in the sidelines.
Yeah, we'll probably be
checking us out.
We'll probably be talking to him on Thursday on the pod. So,
Evan, I'm not sure where Evan comes from. PA, what is it, Evan? PA Prep Live. He's in filling out all his paperwork today, so we're already putting him to work. He'll be out at a game Thursday night, so we'll just throw him right into the fire. But if you see him around, say hello, and we'll certainly have him on the podcast here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll take care of it. That's the 34 Waggle edition, the PA High School Football Report. For Dan and Eric, we'll see you next week.